Okay, I'm here with Dan, and we're going to go over a self-assessment that you guys can do to help clear a couple exercises that are very common in a lot of different strength and conditioning and exercise programs. And those two are the pull-up and the overhead press. So in order to do those week in and week out and stay healthy while doing so, you got to make sure that your shoulder joint can move overhead to around 180 degrees in order to withstand all the force and the load that you're placing on it with those two exercises. So Dan's here. We're going to take a look at his shoulder mobility and just go through a few big things that you guys can look at to clear and make sure that you're okay to train safely overhead each week in your program. So Dan's here. To make it easy, Dan's just going to pop his shirt off for us right here so we can take a look at his shoulder joint and shoulder blades and core while he moves. So Dan, just turn and face the green wall right there. And what you guys are going to do, we'll just spin and go right here, Dan. Yep. What you guys are going to do is have your palms down by your side. They're going to face each other, and with your elbows staying straight, you're going to move your arms up over your head. So Dan's going to step and do that for us right now. And then we'll lower back down, and let's do another one right here, Dan. Perfect. So what we're looking for are three big things when we go through this. The first thing we're going to look at is going to be your rib cage and lower spine position, because you can easily compensate through these areas to make it seem like you're getting all of your overhead range. So Dan's going to move up right now, and the big thing you'll see is Dan's going to show you is that you'll arch through your low back, and your rib cage in the front is going to flare up, which means that your core doesn't have great control, and that your shoulder joint actually can move through all this range, but because you're leaning back and arching through your low back, it'll make it seem like you actually can get that range. So Dan's going to lower down right now. Now Dan, on this one, you squeeze your abs tight, you keep your ribs down, and go through the same movement. And you'll see now that Dan's shoulder range is actually going to be a little bit less, and it's probably more of what his shoulder joint can really do. So let's lower down. So number one right here is making sure that you're checking and looking at your spine and rib cage position during your overhead motion. Second thing we're going to look at, Dan, face the corner of the wall right here, is the movement of your shoulder blades themselves. When you think you're moving up overhead, a lot of people just picture it's their shoulder joint moving, but your shoulder blades actually have to rotate up on your upper back as well. I think normal numbers you'll see are around 60 degrees of upward rotation, but Dan's going to go through right now and show you guys how your shoulder blades should be able to rotate up on your upper back as you go overhead. And 60 degrees is a tough ballpark to measure, but what we'll usually do is see if this bottom angle, Dan, lower down, of your shoulder blade can actually come up and meet about the line of your armpit. So Dan's going to do another. Good. So the second thing you're looking at is how well do your shoulder blades rotate up. Does it have to be 60 degrees? Probably around their ballpark is a good range for you guys to say, to get to make sure that your shoulder joint can move adequately through your shoulder flexion. And then the last thing we're going to look at is your shoulder joint itself. So Dan will move up one more time overhead. We're just making sure that your shoulder joint can move through all that shoulder flexion. So big things that'll stop that, you'll see with Dan, are people who have really tight lats or pecs and they pull down on that shoulder and don't let it rotate up overhead. So you can lower back down. So third and final thing you're going to look at after you look at your spine and rib cage position, and then the ability for your shoulder blades to rotate up, is going to be the actual ability for your shoulder, that ball in the socket, to be able to move through its shoulder flexion. So big things we look at overhead, can you keep your rib cage and spine in a good position? Do your shoulder blades rotate up adequately? And can your shoulder joint itself actually move through all that range? If you scroll down below, you'll look at some good exercises to help you improve your mobility overhead if you are struggling right now, and then some substitutions you can make as you're working mobility for your overhead pressing and your pull-ups.